We have a 1939 Alice Chalmers tractor here that was donated to the museum. When we got it, it was in a little bit rougher shape than what you see here. It hadn't been run in several years, and so it took some effort to get it back into running condition. We had to put new tires on it, mechanical things to get it in running condition. And at this point, we have a functioning tractor. It came with two pieces of equipment on it right now. There's a cultivator for cultivating a row crop, and then we have a middle buster that is sitting behind it. This tractor, we don't really know for certain what the original ownership or use of it was. One version of the history that we've got on it is that it had originally been used in a cotton compress in Garland. That may or may not be an accurate story, but eventually Devon Reed, who was a long-time member of the community, bought it and used it in his garden. And he had it for quite a number of years while he gardened it, and then he sold it to Paul Head, who was involved with the Historical Society, and when Paul was going to move, he donated the tractor. And that was the point that we hauled it over here and got it back into operating condition. This particular tractor is a Model T, and it's one that Alice Chalmers started building in 1937. Many of the early productions were start only, didn't have any electrical system on it. They were equipped with a magneto, which allowed the engine to run without having any other electrical system on it. This one is a slightly upgraded version in that it actually has an electric starter on it, and it actually did have lights. All the original lights are on, and so as it stands, we have the option of either putting a battery in it and using that to start it, or since the ignition system is standalone, so it can crank start it and not have to put a battery in it. Start it that way can be done. These parts that you see right here are the row crop cultivator. You can see there's some feet on the bottom of it for tilling around the row. You would put the tractor directly over whatever the row is that you're working on, and use that to do the elevation between rows. This large lever on here is for raising and lowering the machine. You move it to one extreme to get it up out of the ground, and you move it the other way to put it back in. Probably move it here with you. Pull it back, raise it up, and then forward, drops it down into the ground. The whole back part of it also is all connected together, so the whole thing goes up and down. This machine that's sitting right here is a middle buster. It goes on the back of it. It's used to open up a row when you're getting ready to start preparing for planting, and you use that to break an old hill open and get you a flatter surface to plant in. So once you've got your garden in place, you would set that aside, put the cultivators on.
So it'll start either by hand crank or a battery. Has a
right. Yeah. You can. This actually right here is the box that holds the battery, and normally you would put a 6-volt battery in there and connect it up, and then you'd be able to use the electric start to run the engine. But again, like I said, since it's magneto ignited, if there's no battery there, it would run anyway. It has got a generator on it that will recharge the battery when it is running, so it should self-support itself while it's functioning.
Is it like a 4-cylinder?
It's a 4-cylinder engine. It's somewhere in the 18 or 20 horsepower range, about 120 cubic inches. The transmission is a 3-speed. It's got a shift lever right here to select the gear you're in. And there's also a has a 3-speed transmission, shift levers right here. There's a power takeoff with a belt pulley on it, which is controlled by this lever right here. When you throw that to the engaged position, there's a shaft on the back of the tractor that rotates along with the engine so that you can power some implement you put behind it. There's also a belt pulley that you can see underneath here, right here, and that will you can put a flat belt on that and run it back here behind the tractor to run a stationary piece of equipment that would be driven by a belt. It was used for things like corn shellers, grinders, and implements of that sort that were used around the farm.
That's a new tires you said they got stored in McKinney.
Yes, so these rear tires were actually donated to the Historical Society by Thomas and Tire up in McKinney. Really appreciated that contribution from them to this, because tires tend to be a relatively expensive item.
And when was it painted? This was in the last couple of years, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was painted just over a year ago. The new paint job was first shown at our annual meeting almost exactly a year ago right now. And we've had it back in running condition for, maybe 2 years before that.
You drive it to Fall Fest, don't you?
I have. I've driven it to Fall Fest. I've driven it down to the Christmas parade and a few things like that. Got a really good look out of it.
Pretty good rundown. Is there anything additional that you need to say as far as maintenance or whatever?
That gets off to the other half of things. To the front, just going to walk around. For operation and maintenance on this tractor, there are a number of things that need to be attended to keep the thing in operating condition. One of which, of course, is the ignition system, which is a magneto which generates its own electricity, and then the power goes from there out to the spark plugs. Inside of here, there's a set of ignition points and a condenser, all the typical things you can find in the ignition system. The plug wires are made of a solid core wire. The more recent resistance type wire will not work well in this application because there are limits to the power output of this magneto. So you got that fairly conventional set of spark plugs. Engine oil, original recommendation on it was probably something like an SAE 30. That would be fine for it now, or a 10W30 would be okay. The oil, the filler is underneath this vent right here on top. You have a dipstick here for checking the level. Drain, of course, down on the bottom of the pan. So that's about it on that. There's the oil pressure gauge is right here. You need to watch that whenever you start it up or have it running. The starter, there's a lug right here. That's where the main tap for power goes from it. And with the batteries in place, which it isn't right now, the hot side of the battery would also have a cable that goes to that point. The battery is a positive ground system. The positive cable off of the battery would go down to a ground and convenient place over on the other side. So that's pretty well what there is to the ignition system. If you look at the instrument panel here, right, there's an ammeter, and there are two switches here. The one on the right is the ignition switch, out to run, in to stop. On the left is another switch that actually is there for the lighting system, and that's a 3-position switch. In is off, pulling it out one position actually moves it to a high charge position on the generator, and moving it out to the second or third positions would control the actual lights themselves. Normally, this is a non-regulated system, or the generator is somewhat self-regulating, It does not have a full voltage regulator. It simply has an ignition or a electrical cutout connected to the generator. And the way this switch works, you manually control either a high or a low charge array. If you're using it all day, you put it down on low charge. If you are using it intermittently, you put it on high charge. I moved the low charge resistor and actually disconnected it in there so that right now, if you put it in the low charge position, it does not charge at all. That allows us to operate it without a battery. If we didn't have the battery in, the generator would be trying to charge and would have nowhere to go. So if we run it without a battery, the switch needs to be all the way in. If we have a battery in place, then we can click it out one position to get the high charge rate. Come around over here, we can see in the transmission that there's a plug here that actually has a label on it that says oil level. That's actually the filler and level plug for the transmission. The transmission should have its oil changed periodically. The same oil reservoir includes the transmission and the differential. There are drain plugs on the bottom. There are a total of 3 plugs under there. To drain it completely, you have to pull all 3 plugs out. On the refill, you just fill it here and it gets all areas inside of there. We won't crawl down underneath to look at them, but on each side there's a final drive housing near the tires. Those have their own oil reservoirs as well and have a similar level plug on them. Transmission, final drives, all would use 90-weight gear oil. Up here along this side, there are a lot of maintenance items here. There are some grease fittings that are all the way around the whole tractor. And this one actually goes into the steering gear box. When we get up here, this is the point that the fuel is drawn out of the gasoline tank. And there's a glass sediment bowl here that is used to separate out contaminants that might be in the gasoline. And this little handle here is a valve for opening and closing the fuel supply. Normally you want to keep that closed anytime it's not being used, and you need to open it up when you get ready to run it. Okay. With that, I think we've pretty well come up around all the way around the tractor. When you get ready to start it, you normally would set you open the fuel, set the throttle up to where the lever is about standing upright, about vertical. On there, we have a hand choke, we have a hand choke lever right here, which is sticking. There it comes. You pull that back. You probably need to choke it pretty thoroughly at first. If you have a battery in it, then you pull this handle right here to start it. Or your alternative is to crank. Usually it starts fairly quickly or after just a few pulls. As soon as it starts, you need to open the choke up part way and give it a chance to warm up. Is there anything else I missed?
But does it have a crank handle?
Yeah, the crank is actually inside right now. It's not out here on it. But the crank just goes in the front, typical fashion. And one of the interesting things about this is they got a nice place for storing the crank that was really good when they were only hand start, but as soon as they put the battery in, the battery kind of got in the way of the crank. So about all you can do is just stick it in the toolbox.
I don't know what that is, toolbox.
Yeah.
I saw that box in the jail cell.
Yeah, there's a box in there that's labeled things that belong to the tractor. That's really about it. Unless we actually tried starting it, which I'm not ready to try today.
Yeah. But it is gasoline. It's because it's got spark plug. It is gasoline in it. It is gasoline. It's got spark plugs, so it's not a diesel.
Right. And usually when we come out here to do anything with it, the gasoline that's in it's kind of stale, so you have to deal with that. I try to not put any more gasoline in it than we really need for whatever we're going to do that day, so that we don't have a lot of stale gas in it.
Can you drain it out at the sediment level?
The
drain
most
it.
convenient way to drain it is probably to unhook this gas line right here and bring that down to where you can get it to a container, and then open the valve up and let it run. I have had to do that once or twice.
Just run with regular gas.
Yeah, just plain regular unleaded gas is fine. Sometimes people get concerned about the use of unleaded gas in an old thing like this, and the truth of the matter is, when this was built, gas didn't have much lead in it anyway.
What model is it? What year was it?
It's a 1939 Alice Chalmers Model B.